Greetings, class. Welcome back to another session of TESOL methods, specifically designed for language arts. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about listening and beginning to listen, types of things that you should be doing when you're focusing on teaching listening. We're going to have other materials as well. Some of these materials are coming right out of Nation's book, Teaching, Listening, and Speaking. So let's jump right into this section right now and see if we can find anything that's going to be useful for you in your classes. Talking about listening, what should the students be listening to? What should they be learning when they do their listening, and how should they do this? And then some useful activities. First of all, when you're beginning with listening activities, what do your students need to learn with regard to listening? What do we teach them in terms of listening? Some of these are rather obvious. You're going to be teaching them the alphabet, especially if they're younger level students, and they don't already know the alphabet. Many countries teach this alphabet, or at least parts of it, from their own language. Other countries require English education. So there are a lot of times where kids come in and they already know the alphabet. But if they don't, if you're dealing with very young ones, then you're going to teach the alphabet. You're going to be teaching useful expressions, what I would consider survival English phrases. If you're in a classroom setting, you're going to be teaching them things like, I don't understand, can you help me, where's the bathroom? That kind of useful phrases about everyday life. After they learn vocabulary, you're going to be trying to teach them how to do a sight vocabulary. So the things that they often see that are in the more practical sense, they should be learning to be able to read those, and that includes the phonics that are involved in that. Classroom expressions that they should be learning, again, so that they can survive in the classroom. And then last, this is again beginning stuff, high-frequency vocabulary. And this includes at least up to 2,000 of the most frequently used vocabulary words that you should be stressing. Any number of ways to be doing this, but again, the nuts and bolts of this includes high-frequency vocabulary. What should they be learning? How should they learn? Again, as Nation has stressed over and over again, meaning-focused input, meaning-focused output, language focus, and then language fluency. And so for listening, there should be a focus on the meaning and then also on relevant content. So students should be focusing on meaning as they're listening, and they should be focusing on things that are relevant to them. Again, depending on their age, they're going to be finding information that's available, that's necessary for their classrooms or for communicating in the greater community. So that would be the relevant content, and of course, they're supposed to be focusing on meaning, not on language. Or fluency necessarily, right? Obviously, they're not going to be doing that. Big problem here as far as overloading students. You want to not overload them, and this can happen very easily, especially with new learners. I stress this idea that language is kind of like this huge ocean, and if you throw this ocean of information at students, they get overloaded, they get overwhelmed, their stress factor goes through the roof, and they quit learning. So it's very important to find materials that are short, whether they're reading texts or whether they're listening materials. The information that you should be writing to students is not going to overload them, something that they can handle. So little bite-sized pieces, at least initially. And the materials that you select should be interesting. So you should provide materials that interest them. That means you're going to have to do some investigating. And you should have a variety of activities. Especially at the beginning, when students are beginning to listen for the first time, they can get frustrated very quickly. Understand that most of what they hear is just noise. It's, all this information that's just thrown at them. So if you can slow things down and make it short and small so they can pick up one or two things and keep a variety of activities going, now eventually as they continue to learn more and more and they get stronger with their language, you can build things out and make them bigger and stronger. But try to maintain interest with a lot of different little activities. If I'm dealing with new language learners, and I have maybe an hour-long class, I might prepare 7 or 8 different activities. Some of them are very short, right? So they can do it, they can practice it, they can understand it, and then they can move on to something else. Now, I can't do that all the time. Eventually, I'm going to have to slow down with the number of activities that I have. But have them, make sure they're interesting. Don't overload the students. And the next one here, provide plenty of opportunities for comprehensible input. That's a big crash and word there, comprehensible input, information that they can hear, and not only hear, but also understand and try to do something with. Comprehensible input. Lastly, Nation talks about creating a friendly environment so that the affective filter is low. I don't know that that's, I'm assuming that would be standard. What is friendly, what is safe is going to depend on what your students need. I'll leave it at that. That's a kind of an obvious. But provide lots of opportunities for them to listen. Okay? Some useful activities is that you can have students, again, memorize useful phrases. Do dialogues with those, or what do you call it, role-playing type of thing. You can do practice sentence patterns, which I'm not necessarily thrilled with in a listening environment, but they can listen and repeat, or they can modify, hear something modified and then change. You could do guided listening and speaking, things like dictation, or a role play, or a script type of thing, where you can have a guided activities where you're kind of helping them along. You can use a picture dictionary, which I just love. You have a dictionary of just a whole bunch of pictures, and they can talk about the pictures. They can listen to a story and put the pictures in the right order, so they can talk about them. You can do imagination activities. I absolutely love the whole idea of using imagination. And that way you don't have to have a lot of materials. You can have the students imagine. Again, if this is speaking that we're talking about, they have to create a story. Maybe they have to create a story using vocabulary or using ideas that you're talking about, but they have to make up the story. And then someone has to listen and take notes type of thing, or they have to listen and be able to tell somebody else the story. You can do TPR type of activities, and this is more for listening, where students have to listen and do what you tell them to do. Open the book to page 15. Go open the window, sit down, all these different types of TPR type of activities. Again, all these are focusing on meaning, right? They're not focusing on the grammar necessarily. Other meaning-focused activities are things like 20 questions. I often would call these mysteries, where I would tell a story that has, an ending where someone gets hurt or someone dies, and they need to figure out what happened at the end. The example that I typically give is this is a story about a man who's walking in the middle of the field, and as he's walking in this field, he looks down and he sees a guy in the field, and he's got a pack on his back, and he's dead. And so I explain this to the students, and then I say to them, now, who was this guy? And when I say who was he, I mean, what was his job? Was he a truck driver, or was he a windsurfer? Who was he, and how did he die? And then they start asking me questions. I can only answer yes or no, so it's this yes-no practice. But I'm really focusing on language, and they're trying to figure out what happened here. How did this guy end up in the middle of the field? I also give them some higher-order thinking activities. I give them hints like, I walked to the middle of the field. How did he get there? And they're like, oh, and they weren't thinking about that, so you can do that type of activity. But 20 questions is a lot of fun. You can, again, play hints type of game where you're trying to get them to find the answer. I did a game that was kind of like a circumlocution game where you're trying to collect vocabulary cards, and one student will give hints about the word, and the other people in the group have to find out what the word is, and whoever guesses the word, they get to collect the cards. And little kids, they love to collect cards, and then they get to win a prize. Ask and move, same or different, ask and speak and draw. So those are a lot of fun, different type of activities. Again, where one person is speaking, the other person has to listen and understand and then move. So, for example, if you wanted to play checkers, and you have to play from a distance, someone can't actually move them. Somebody else has to move them for you, right? Type of activities. There are others as well. The drawing is particularly interesting, where you try to tell a student how to draw something. I would typically have a student who is facing, that way toward the camera, and there's another person sitting this way, away from the camera, okay? And the person who's facing me, they can see what's on the board back here, And on the board back here, there is a picture drawn, some type of design or face or something. I can't see it. Okay, and so this person that's sitting here has to look at the picture behind me and tell me what to draw. So it's very difficult to do, but it's rather interesting. They enjoy it, even though they say it's tiring, because they're struggling to try to explain how to draw something. And you give them hints and you help them along the way. But it's definitely a very fun activity, this speak and draw type of thing. All right, planning some listening speaking activities. You should make sure that you include opportunities for listening and speaking throughout the week. As I mentioned before, maybe 7 activities in an hour. One of those can be a speaking activity. One of those can be a listening activity where, they have to listen to something and respond in some way, whether they're taking notes or they're moving or they're checking off something on a list. Okay, but they've got to be doing something, right? Plan for a variety of opportunities. Lots of input is very good, and opportunities for pushed output is also very good. Include listening for meaning and language focus. So you're going to be able to listen for meaning, which is obvious, but you're also going to try to find opportunities to talk about pronunciation. You may be noticing that students have certain problems with certain sounds, and you can help them with that. Include speaking for meaning and also language fluency. So I've had teachers do something that I learned at a conference called shadowing, where for the whole class, that whole hour or whatever long your class is, the student just shadows everything you say. And the whole class is just repeating everything that's going on, and it's just this little echo the whole way through the class. It's a great opportunity to improve language fluency. Okay? Encourage active listening, where students are not only listening, but they have to do something with that information, so they have to be focused on the information that's coming to them. Times where I've had activities that were like a song that they had to listen to, but they had to fill in the words. There were words that were missing, and so they had to be actively listening. Same thing with taking notes, where you have words that are missing, so now you have to actively listen. Encourage students to ask questions if they don't understand something. Can you repeat this again? Can you say that again? What does this mean? Type of thing. Above all, listening and speaking, have fun. Listening and speaking is a great way to encourage your students to, realize that they can do things and that language learning can be a fun activity. Keep them motivated. Big plus there. That's all I have for this particular chapter with regard to listening. And so if you do have any questions about it, please let me know. If not, I will see you online.